Epstein was absolutely doing a lot of really shady arms trafficking stuff and financial criminality, and they have no interest in getting deep in the weeds there.
Melania Trump stepped in front of a podium and delivered a denial that shocked Washington. Not because people had never seen a public figure deny connections to Jeffrey Epstein before, but because of how unusual it was. It was unprompted, it was unscheduled, and it sounded like a response to something bigger than a normal news cycle.
The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors. Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony. Each and every woman should have her day to tell her story in public if she wishes, and then her testimony should be permanently entered into the congressional record.
Then, almost immediately, a woman named Amanda Ungaro fired back with a public threat, saying she had been around Melania's world for 2 decades and warning that she could expose everything she knows. And that is where this story stops being just another headline, because now the question is no longer only what Melania denied, the question is, why did she feel the need to deny it so forcefully in the first place? What makes this story so compelling is not just the denial itself, it's the timing. It's the tone, and it's the fact that the denial came before any formal public process forced it. No courtroom appearance, no active hearings centered on her, no subpoena, no immediate legal trigger. And yet the First Lady chose to walk out and directly address Epstein, Maxwell, and her own place in that orbit. That matters, because when someone speaks that early and that directly, people naturally start asking whether the statement was meant only to clear the record or to get ahead of something. That is the tension sitting underneath this whole story. Amanda Ungaro matters here because she is not being presented as a random internet voice jumping into a trending topic. She is being framed as someone who says she spent years around the same social world, the same tables, the same events, the same family orbit. That's what gives her threat weight. Not because a threat proves anything by itself, it doesn't, but because a person claiming long-term proximity to the Trump social environment is very different from a stranger making noise online. And the video goes further by tying both Ungaro and Melania to Paolo Zampoli, the man credited with bringing Melania into Donald Trump's orbit and, according to the video, also bringing Ungaro into that same broader world. So the core issue becomes proximity, not proof, not verdict, but proximity. And in stories like this, proximity is often where the public starts asking harder questions. Then the story gets darker, because Amanda Ungaro is not introduced here only as someone who knew people around Melania Trump. She is also presented as someone who says she was pulled into the wider modeling ecosystem connected to Jeffrey Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel. Ungaro says that as a teenager, she boarded Epstein's private jet with Brunel and many other very young girls, and that she felt immediate discomfort. Now, to be precise, the video does not claim that she accuses Epstein of directly assaulting her, but it does present her as someone who sees herself as part of a system built around young women, power, access, and exploitation. And that shifts the story, because now Amanda Ungaro is not just someone from Melania's social world. She is being positioned as someone who believes she saw the inside of a much darker network. When a person with that kind of claimed history posts a public message saying, "I was around you for 20 years and I will expose everything I know," people pay attention. Not because the message itself proves the claim, but because it introduces risk. Political risk, media risk, reputational risk. And that is why this story works so powerfully as commentary. It sits in the gap between what is formally proven and what suddenly feels possible. Is emotionally direct, personal, and confrontational. It does not read like a polished legal statement. It reads like someone who feels ignored, angry, and ready to drag private history into public view. And those are exactly the kinds of moments that make powerful people nervous. Another reason this story escalates is because the source video places Amanda Ungaro in a vulnerable position before this public clash even happened. It says she had already been arrested in Miami, tied to an alleged unlicensed cosmetic surgery clinic, then taken into immigration detention, and later sought deportation back to Brazil. That changes the emotional dynamic, because now the story is not just about old parties, old names, and old connections. It becomes about someone who, according to the video, feels discarded, someone who believed she was once close enough to the family world to matter, and later found herself in detention, out of power, out of favor, and outside the circle. And if that is how she sees it, then her message to Melania becomes more than an accusation. It becomes a rupture. This, to me, is the strongest angle in the whole story, not whether Amanda Ungaro can prove every implication people are now reading into her message, not whether every detail will hold up. But why Melania Trump felt the need to speak first. That is the question that gives this story its force. Because if there was no immediate formal threat demanding that statement, then the denial begins to look less like routine damage control and more like preemption. And once a denial feels preemptive, the public starts asking what was anticipated, what was feared, what was already circulating behind the scenes, what might still be waiting to surface. That is why the story lingers, because the denial may have been meant to close the subject, but instead, it may have opened a new one. So where does this leave us? With a First Lady who made a rare and forceful public denial, with a woman claiming 20 years of proximity to that world, with a threat to expose what she knows, and with a public that is now asking whether the denial came before the real pressure arrived. That doesn't mean every online claim is true, it doesn't mean every threat turns into proof, but it does mean this story has crossed into dangerous territory for anyone who wants it to disappear quietly. Because once someone from inside the social orbit starts talking like that, the story is no longer only about the past. It becomes about what else might still come out. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Amanda Ungaro's threat is just anger and noise, or do you think Melania's early denial suggests there is more behind the scenes than the public knows? I'll see you in the next one.